Okay, hi. Welcome. Just a quick check. We're supposed to be live on YouTube now. Is that true? That's true. Okay, so this also means that the rest in the rooms below us could hear me. So could you guys make some noise? It's delayed.
So we hear some noise in 10 seconds.
Oh wow, that's no. Okay. Wow. So 10 seconds later they'll probably be cheering or something, I hope. Anyway, as I said earlier before, and I will now thank you all for being here. Nice to see so many new faces actually. Okay, wow, that was unexpected, but still expected. Oh well, I thought. Well, anyway, so there are probably people watching from home. I hope they also yelled for us. Probably couldn't hear it, but anyway, welcome. We're O10PHP. Today is a special meetup for us. And after that we have a short break to freshen up a bit, like get some drinks, stretch your feet. And then Stefan Komenschap will take over and speak about leveling up your team. After which we do our roundup and start of the raffle. For those of you who are not in the room with us, like, well, the 2 stories below us, and for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, you can ask questions, probably with a 10 seconds delay, by Twitter. By using the hashtag O10PHP, you can ask questions for the presenter, for Ron or Stefan. If you have a question like on the presentation or something, feel free to tweet it, Antoine, and I will keep an eye on it and, well, ask the question for you. Also, for those of you at home, feel free to join in on the conversation. Thank you very much, DPDK, and thereby ook Harm. Where is Harm actually? He's outside eating burgers. Yeah, that's probably what I should have been doing. Anyway, he made this possible. He came up to us and said, hey, we could probably host an event for you, with you. And well, we now have almost 70 members here or attendees. So thank you very much. Antoine, this one goes out to you. Well, as I said, it's our anniversary. Sorry, let's go. So yeah, thank you. Tonight has been made possible, well, as I said, by DPDK, but also by Ingewikkeld, Device, Karoga.net, JetBrains, Wiskunde, the ACA, and Xolfin. They are sponsors for tonight by providing raffle items, or sponsoring us in a different way. So after the presentation of Stefan, we'll be raffling the items which they gave us to raffle away. If you have any feedback for our speakers tonight, many of you already probably already have heard of Joined In. We've made a meetup page, and the event contains the 2 speakers. So if you want to leave feedback that's very valuable for the speakers tonight, then feel free to do that there. Also, we're on Slack. If you just want to hook up with us, just talk about dev stuff or whatnot. You can find us on the phpnl slack.com. If you are already not are in the Meetup server, you can go to phpnl.nl first to register yourself. Then you get an invite and you can access the Slack server. As I said many times now, the raffle will be after the show. Tonight we're going to raffle these items: a PHP license storm, a few power banks, a notitieboekje, a notebook, the book from Amanda Palmer, The Art of Asking. Xolven has donated 10 lockpicking sets, and yeah, they're actually lockpicking sets. They actually work. I've tested them out. Did you? Sure, I want all 10 of them. Yeah, so no, I tested them out. I hope you guys got to see my new car. It's outside. Anyway, and Wiskunde is providing 2 times a 1-year Docker registry private repositories. So, thank you very much. Next month, our meetup will be about machine learning by Short Maase. I thought this was also on the DPC this year. Yes. Was that true? Anyone attended it? Yes. Yeah? Yes, was it a good talk? Yes. Then it's a good choice. So we're also looking for new speakers. This year the agenda is almost filled up to the max. But next year we also want to keep going on. So if you are a speaker, have a few presentations laying around that you actually want to present to people, then please do contact us by Slack, Twitter, websites or whatnot, and we'll arrange a podium for you to present your presentation at. So I think that's all for my slides. I wish you all a good time tonight and hopefully see you next month. And once again, thank you all for being here.
Cool, thanks. All right, also very warm welcome from me. My name is Antoine. I'm technical lead at DPDK, so welcome. I'm very proud to have you all here. It's an honor to have like 70 people walking around at our company. We do a lot of stuff, we do a lot of awesome stuff. We do it for users like you, and it's cool to have such a big group of interesting people here at DPDK. So thank you for being here. That's what I want to say. For a short introduction, who actually knows where DPDK stands for? Yeah, it's always an interesting story, of course. Very DPDK, no, it's not going to work. DPDK stands for the Pannenkoek and the Kale, which is actually standing for the 2 founders of DPDK. Both not working anymore, but doesn't make the name more interesting. It's always cool to tell it. In March, I was in San Francisco, and someone asked, I see DPDK, Netherlands, where are you from? What does it mean? I said, yeah, it's the pancake and the bold one. And the guy couldn't let me alone the whole trip. He's like, oh, yeah, you are the one from the pancake and the bold ones. Yeah, okay. Thank you for reminding me of that again. That's cool. So for this evening, of course, at the barbecue, thank you, Pim, for all the burgers. Yeah, you were there. Yeah. I think that's a very important part. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. The program was already. I've lost him. Where's Roberto? He's gone? Okay, he's gone. Okay, Roberto already pronounced the program for this night. I think it's important at the moment we have a short break We try to keep it as short as possible because after the last talk we actually have time to have some drinks on the roof terrace. I don't think they're burgers anymore, but maybe some cold ones. And we have some special demos downstairs. We have the Oculus Rift and the HoloLens, so if someone wants to play with it, you actually could go downstairs after the last talk to check it out. Some people of us are standing there to guide you through it. Maybe it's cool, so I think it's cool. We also use all those kind of products, so if you have any interest in what we do with all this amazing stuff, check out our website, because a lot of cool projects, not only websites, but complete interactive installations used with products like VR, AR, and we don't walk away from anything. If it's new, we're going to build it here. That brings me to my last point, which is a small point. A lot of developers here, which is interesting because as technical lead, I'm always looking for new talent. So we have actually one back-end development spot where we're looking for. So if you're interested, be sure to contact me on LinkedIn or through email. You can always send me a message, and I will, of course, appreciate it. So don't hesitate. For the evening further, I think I'm going to pass on to Ron for the first talk, and I want to wish you a very good evening. I hope it's nice. Also, I hope it's nice for the people downstairs who will hear me in like 10 seconds. So that's it's pretty cool. So again, thank you. Enjoy your night and have fun.
Ja, kijk, dat lukt zo.
Ja, precies. Het gaat altijd weer expres heel strak natuurlijk. Zie je?
I'm going to give a presentation about Docker, the Hitchhiker's Guide to Docker. Any one of you knows the reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? A lot of hands. Nobody brought a towel? Nobody brought a towel? No? I didn't forget it.
But I know where it is.
It's at home. If your home is still there. Yeah. Well, most of you people now know the reference here. In the beginning, the universe was created. This made a lot of people very angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move. This is one of the most famous quotes of the movie. I thought it was a very good title for the talk because I'm going to make you interested in Docker. I'm going to give you some advice, some tips, some tools, so you can get going and maybe get enthusiastic about the whole subject. And if you have any questions along the way or in the end, just come to me or just ask them here, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. About me, I'm a 34-year-old father. I've got a 4-year-old son right now. I'm a company owner. Wisconde.nl is my company. I'm a software developer since 2005. Before that, I used to be 5 years inside of the army. I love sports. I like all kinds of sports, like fitness, fighting, skating, snowboarding. You can find me anywhere. I'm passionate about martial arts. I'm a part-time personal trainer. Currently, I don't really do it anymore, but just for friends and family. And I'm the owner of a towel, so it's very important here. So what is Docker? For you people who do not know Docker at all, a Docker wraps up container. All these little parts are layers on top of a basic image, and that defines a Docker container by itself based on the basic image. So where to start? if you want to start with Docker. On Linux, you can add the repository for Docker, install Docker engine, and Python pip, package installer for Python, and you can install Docker Compose via pip. I'll come back to that later, what Docker Compose is. That's all you need to do to get going with Docker itself. These 3 tools. On Windows, you can use Docker Toolbox or Docker Beta, the new program from Docker. Unfortunately, doesn't work really well. I'll get back to that later as well. Docker on OS X and Windows is tricky to get it to work properly, especially when you're coming to volume mounting of files and everything. So you're going to have some problems with mounting in Windows, and you're going to have some problems with mounting in OS X because it's all running on virtual machines over there. And even the beta, which it doesn't run on virtual machines, is still going to be a problem with mounting. Docker Compose, an addition to normal Docker where you can orchestrate a whole environment, is also not available on OS X, and you can download it later with Python and package installer. But when we get further into the presentation, you will start to know what Docker Compose actually is, and you will see that it's very useful to have. The basics of Docker. Every single project eventually starts with a Docker file. It's one single file that executes a basic set of commands on top of a base image. So you have, for example, you have a empty Ubuntu 16.04 server install package which has nothing on it. You can then use this Docker file on top of that to add layers to that specific image. Let's say you want to add a web server. Let's say you want to add an SSH client or anything. Let's say you want to add MySQL, or doesn't matter what you want to add. You can add it inside of this Docker file and then build your image along the way. You can add layers till a maximum of 255 layers to this specific image, and then eventually you will have this Docker image that will represent your server, your microservice that you are going to run. There will be a demo later, so you're going to have some more insights. You can modify them to your own likings. You can use pre-created images as well. For example, one of our own images that we created on top of the Ubuntu library 16.04 base image, we've created a Nginx PHP 7 FPM server that we can use for hosting our customers, for example. We have just mounting the web root and persistable data like logging, and for example, you would like to have a vhost that you need to recreate every time. You can add those to the image, and this image for us does everything we need. Actually, it does a little bit too much because it also has varnish, which I don't want inside the image anymore. The Docker file has at first comes with a from statement. There is an example of the Docker file in a moment. A from statement. This defines the base image that you're going to build your own image on top of. So it will pull this image as the base layer, and then you will build on top of that. You can get a image from MySQL, for example, which is already done with MySQL server and is ready to go. And then you can add layers on top of it, save it to your own Docker repository, and from there on you will have your own Docker MySQL image that is built on top of the base image, as an example. Then you have the maintainer, which is more like an information field telling you who created the image and who's maintaining the image itself. One of the keywords that you will find inside there is important is expose. It's one of the keywords that is useful for actually exposing ports from the image itself to the host system that it runs on. If you want to run a web server on Docker, you will need to have the server expose the port to the outside, because you will have an internal network. The Docker itself is an internal network, and you will need to have it connected to the external IP, for example, so that customers can reach the web server. Then you'll need to use expose so that port 80 and 443 in this case are linked to the outside world, and so you can access it. This is also important that you don't want to expose every single port you have, for example. So you don't want to export, for example, the MySQL port if you don't want to access the MySQL server from the outside, which adds a little bit of security to make sure that everybody can start hacking your server on that port. Then one of the most vital parts in there is the command. This is actually the command that runs the Docker container. If the container is being run, it needs to have a process that never ends. It needs to have a process that is always active. If the process exits, for example, if you who of you is familiar with Linux management, server management? Not many? Okay, so if you have a server that runs, most of the processes run in the background. They start up, and then eventually you'll have a shell or something, and nothing will be active in your screen. It has an exit code 1, it is exit correctly, but still the process is running in the background. If this happens, then the Docker container stops, because it doesn't detect a running process. So there always has to be one process that never ends. In this case, we're using Supervisor. It is a process management tool for us that is active in the foreground, and itself will manage, for example, Nginx or PHP for us to make sure it keeps running. And there is volume. Volume is a way to tell the Docker container that it's going to use files from the host system. If you want to create a Docker container, you're going to have to be able to create it from scratch every single time. If I update my server, I don't want to lose my vhost, I don't want to lose my log files, I don't want to lose my web server, web root files or anything. So these files are actually mounted inside of my Docker container. You will tell Docker with volume that these directories are going to be available inside of your installation. That's basically what a volume does. It doesn't automatically mount it, it just makes the reference and makes sure that it's available inside. There are many more useful commands, but I don't think this particular talk is for teaching you every single command there is, but these are the most important ones, the most basic ones as well. But there's also environment, copy, work there, on build, which are also very useful commands you can use when building a Docker file. If you want to look into that later and you're going to start with Docker, eventually you will not need this in the start, but when you go, you will probably need some more of this as well. There's going to be some examples where you will see that I use copy, for example, to copy files from my host system to the image itself upon creation. Here you will see that I built the Docker file. The Docker file that I created in this case is where I was building a PHP 5 Apache server run by Supervisor. Step 1 gets the image. Step 2 tells them what the maintainer is. Step 3 is that I was exposing port 80 and 443. Step 4 is the command that's being run. Eventually, my container was built. It's not doing anything right now. I just built it. It's not running. And from here on, I can spin up a server and go. That's what it actually does eventually. One very, very cool thing with Docker is that you don't have to do this all manually. You don't have to recreate your Docker images everywhere. You can just create an automated build in Docker Hub, connect your Git repository to Docker Hub, make a commit with Git, push it, and Docker will automatically detect the change and start building the container for you, so you can just pull it anywhere you want. So normally you will have to build it locally, start it up. That's what you have to do, start it up, and then a running container, commit it, push it to Docker Hub. It's a normal procedure, but with automated builds, you just work with Git and it will build automatically for you. I use it a lot and it's really awesome. It's better than just using Docker in a normal way. It's just connected to Git, and the dev master of Git itself is the latest stack of your Docker image. So it's really cool. There's an example. It's our own Nginx PHP 7 server that we use. I just use PHP Storm to change my server, and then commit it, push it, and later on my own server I just upgrade it with one click on the button, and all my servers are upgraded. So this is very, very nice. The image is quite small, isn't intended for everybody to see what's on the screen. On the left side you will see a Docker file. It is built from Ubuntu 16.04. I copy some files in there, I run some commands, I install some packages, copy some more files. expose some ports and start supervisor is what the left one does. I push it to Git. On the right side, you will see a success build list. It's building my Docker container or my image for me. And when it's done, it's just available on Docker Hub. This one is a public repository, so it's available for everybody. And eventually I can pull it anywhere I want, where I'm running this container, or maybe I'm starting the container later. One of the advantages here is that if you use this for your current environment, if you use this for your live hosting, your acceptation environments, your test environments, and your development environments, you can use it, you can develop in an equal situation on every single environment. So you don't have a difference between development and production. We all been there. It worked on my machine, and then in production, there was another version of PHP, which wasn't PHP 7, or maybe it was, and then there was some problems with the code not being compatible. But this doesn't happen anymore. If there's the same Docker image on production, if you have that on development, there's not going to be a problem because it's the same code base and the same server infrastructure. You can use a predefined image. You don't have to create everything yourself. There are some very good image maintainers. For example, a lot of big, large companies are already using Docker and providing you with the right images they have. For example, here MySQL. You don't have to create MySQL image yourself if you don't want to. You can use the basic MySQL image, or MariaDB, or Pecona. They're all there. And you can just fire up one of these images and get going right away. You don't have to do anything. The only important thing to remember is that by default, some default passwords are set and some default things, so you make sure you have the right configuration when you do it, but it fires up and you didn't do any work for it. So you can upgrade, downgrade without any work. Very nice. Docker pull. If you have an image that you created, you updated it, it works similar to Git. So you have pushed an image, and maybe you're working with a team of 4 or 5 colleagues, and they're all on the same Docker environment, and they're having an older image because you just committed a new one. All your colleagues have to do is pull the newer version and then reload the server, and then they have, for example, instead of PHP 5.6, they went to PHP 7, maybe, or upgraded from 7.06 to 7.08. This is basically what it does. It also is able to work with tags. So you can use the latest tag, but you can also tag a 5.6 version where you maintain a PHP 5.6 installation, or you can add a PHP 7 tag where you can maintain the PHP 7 only version. So this is all just like basic Git commands that you have is the same in Docker. It does have a little bit more limitations because in Git you can make thousands of commits or millions, and Docker only supports 255 layers. So if you keep adding layers, eventually you cannot push anymore, and then you will start getting problems. Docker run. This is what actually executes the container. So it doesn't, the build, what I just shown you, the build, it builds the image. With Docker run, you can tell the server to spin up one of these containers and actually make port 80 and port 443 available to the system and make sure that you can access it from the outside world. So this is what Docker run does. It actually runs the process, user bin supervisor D, what I just shown you, runs it and keeps it active. If the active process is killed, what I just told earlier, then the process ends, Docker stops, the container finishes. Docker execute is very important when you have a running container. Most of the times you want to do something inside of the container. So there are ways that you might want to test something or you want to check something out. You can use Docker execute. You can connect your own interface to that container. For example, you can run bin bash and then you're inside of the container. Without any problems, you can manage the container if you want, or you don't want to do a lot of that because if you change anything inside the container and you upgrade it, then you're going to lose the changes unless you commit it locally. But you can do a lot of things with Docker exec and entering it. With Docker inspect, you can check configuration of a running image, a running container or an image. You can see the base image that it was built on. You can see the layers, you can see all kinds of things about the state on a running container. So there's a very cool and good information that you can get from using Docker Inspect. I don't have to use it quite a lot, but it gives you quite some insight. Now you have Docker Compose. I told you about Docker, which already gives you a very nice opportunity to build a single server environment. So you have this web server running, you have Nginx running and PHP, but now you probably want to have MySQL, maybe you want to have Elasticsearch, Redis, maybe you want to have some extra Solar server. This is something that you normally have to spin up 5 or 6 or 7 containers manually, and Docker Compose gives you the opportunity to actually orchestrate this complete environment in one single file. So you don't have to do all of this manually. It will automatically map the ports, it will mount the volumes, it will do every single task that you need to do to fire up this whole infrastructure in one go. You just run Docker Compose up, and it will start all the servers that you defined in the file, and you don't have to worry about it. It also connects the servers to each other. They're available, they all have their own network. And inside of the container, for example, if you got a host for MySQL that is called MySQL, then inside of the web container you can access it via the host name MySQL. So it is very easily available, and that's what Docker Compose does. It's really, really, really useful. It works with one YML file. It's called dockercompose.yml. You can spin up this entire infrastructure that I just explained and link the containers to each other. This is what it looks like. First, we've seen the Docker file, what I've shown you from maintainer, expose. This was the Docker file. Here you have this example of the Docker Compose. The first one, database, is spinning up a MariaDB server. In this case, it's obviously exposing port 3306. It might be a poor decision, but it will expose port 3306 to the outside world on that server. So keep that in mind. It will mount the volume /data/acceptation/db to var/lib/mysql, which is the directory that MySQL uses to maintain its databases. So when you upgrade the container, the data will not get lost, it will persist because it's mounted from the host system. You're gonna have to set some environment variable. Here you'll see that I will set the MySQL root password upon creation. So that the root password is something that I personally know and nobody else. The second one is basically the same. I'm not gonna explain most of it, but the first command you will see is build. And this one tells me that I'm not gonna use a predefined image, but that I have a Docker file that I want to build from right this spot. So if I have a Docker file in the same directory, I can build that Docker file and spin up that container next to the MySQL container that is being built. On the bottom, you will see that there's links. This will tell this platform section that there's 3 other servers connected. There's an Elasticsearch server, there's a Mongo search server, and there is a database server. You will just see the database fragment up above, but when I go into the platform container, I can access the database with the host name database here because it's defined as database, so it's linked to each other. They're in the same subnet, they're using the same IP address subnets, and can access each other. There are a lot of more tools than just using basic commands. You can use Docker Toolbox on Windows and OS X. It adds a lot of extra graphical tool sets to the basic Docker library. It will also, in Windows, it's needed to add Docker support, for example, to Windows and to OS X. You can use Docker Swarm, which creates a cluster environment for Docker. I've been testing with that. Maybe it's a bit more mature, but it was a big problem in the past where the hosts lost track of each other and everything, so we stopped using Swarm at the moment. It wasn't really needed for us, but there are some very large companies still using Swarm, so I bet it's a lot better. And there's Doku, which is a Heroku clone by DigitalOcean. There's a lot more tools than just this, but these are very good tools that are being used a lot. There are some graphical tools. that you can use to manage Docker containers. You can imagine if you're going to be running a company and you're going to be maintaining a lot of servers. For most of the people who are working with servers, it's always been this gray area where only this guy from downstairs knows where the server is being run or what the status is, or, you know, when you have to update it and they're like, okay, is it the most up-to-date version? This is what server management has always been. Fortunately, with Docker, this gets a lot easier. It's not something that you might want to let your sales manager or something just upgrade servers, and you know, it's like, okay, it's easy. It gives you a nice overview. This person could look at it, could probably see some details. It could tell you some information without actually knowing a lot about the server. So the graphical user management, the graphical management about Docker containers is pretty useful. I have an intern. I used to have an intern. He just finished last week, which was able to build a complete infrastructure for Docker without any knowledge of server hosting. He started in my company without any Linux knowledge, and when he left, he was able to actually maintain it and everything. So it's a very low profile. It's very simple to get going with the graphical tools. We tested all 5 of these: Kubernetes, Panamax, Rancher, ClusterUp, Shipyard, and all 5 of them, when we started with this, it was like a year ago when we started with that, gave problems. Some used Swarm, some used another technique, and it was very hard to get the servers working correctly. We use Rancher right now, but still Rancher is also not perfect, of course, but it is very useful when you see the interface and the simplicity of it. Why do we use Rancher? It can also use a very simplistic Rancher OS. We don't use that, but it's a very small one. Makes it easy to run containers very fastly. Because it doesn't depend, the container infrastructure doesn't depend on the server that it's on. It's all the same, with a little bit of exceptions about users, but we couldn't get that to work very nice. A lot of people who use it, the server kept on crashing. If you look in Google and you will find Rancher OS, you will see that there are a lot of problems with crashing Rancher OS servers out of the blue. So we just went back to Ubuntu and it works really nice. The logos, they don't make sense because that's like a cow, and everything from Docker is, it's in the water, you know. So it's a commando cow. So, but it's a really nice tool. It's easy to set up, and it's a Docker container itself. So you have a server, and you will use a management interface that is itself a Docker container. You can keep it up to date. It's very easy to keep the management interface going. And adding servers to the whole infrastructure is literally copy-pasting one link. So I copy one link, I go to the server, paste it there, press enter, and my server magically appears in my environment. And I can go from there. It's very, very easy. You can manage both separate containers and you can manage stacks. If you look at Docker Compose, what I just told you, you can do the whole thing inside of Rancher. You can just create a complete stack and keep everything grouped together. You can actually create, for every customer, you can create a different view, which we do at the moment. And then you have stacks, for example. You will have a web environment for production. You might have an acceptation environment. You might have another environment that you want to spin up, and you can keep them nicely grouped together. You can add new servers with one command. You can load balance, even over SSL, with a couple of clicks. So it's not very hard. You can distribute containers automatically over servers. If all the servers are yours, let's say you have 4 servers and all of them are yours, you can just slide to the right. You say I want 4 web servers, slide to the right, and eventually it will be evenly distributed over all servers without having to do any configuration. So it works really easy. But if you want to do some specific work, which most of the people want to do, then you don't want to use the slider, but you want to set everything up and specify the hosts and make some schedule requirements for the server, but you can easily scale up. You can upgrade and roll back. I use this a lot because when I put some code on acceptation for my customers, usually everything works fine, perfectly. My customers test 3 minutes and then works perfectly. Then they go to production and suddenly they're like, okay, wait, I probably have to test this better. And then they're going to test in production, as most of people do. And then 15 minutes later, he will be on the phone and he'll say, okay, sorry, this part broke. I didn't test this properly on acceptation, this broke. When you do an upgrade in Rancher, there is a button that allows you to roll back instantaneously to the previous version in a matter of a millisecond. It will throw away the new container, it will start back up, well it will actually, it's already started, it will make sure that the old container is available again, and you can fix it in a millisecond, so it doesn't call you at night and you don't have to work all night. It's a millisecond. This is really, really useful, because customers, they don't test. This is what it looks like, or at least a part of it. There's an Apache PHP 5 stack here. You see that I added 2 servers in this part, and there is a load balancer, and there is 2 web containers. The web containers on the right side is a bit hard to see probably, but there's actually 2 web servers, and there is 1 load balancer, so it will automatically load balance. Working properly as it should, it will not show any error message or anything. It will just keep on working for your customers. It does show anything. It does show it here, but it doesn't show it to your customers. It will just ignore this extra host, which is very nice, so that the experience is good for the end customer. So this is what the load balancer does. When you add hosts, you can add it to the infrastructure, and you will see that there is a host generated. You will see sidekicks and everything. It's just a way for Rancher to group up extra containers. Here you will see that I added 3 hosts to it, physical hosts, where I can create, on top of that, where I can create Docker containers. So if I create an extra stack, it will just fire up these containers here. You will see that there is an Elasticsearch server. Actually, there's 3 Elasticsearch servers. There's a Redis server started. There's a multiple things started spread over the infrastructure. Some tips about using Docker. If you use it and if you start using it, it's probably going to be an easy ride when you start. But as you move along and you want to go micromanage your servers, or you want to add some security, or you want to develop using Docker instead of Vagrant or instead of native on your system, then you're going to run into some things. Maybe not at the start, but as you go, you will run into some things. One of the things that you will run into is that Docker, by default, uses IP tables for its forwarding, for its firewalling, for everything. For those that don't know what IP tables is, basically it's the firewall that's installed on site on top of a Linux system. It will use this IP tables to make sure that you can reach the port 80. It will make sure that you cannot reach anything else. It will make sure that hosts can reach each other. It will use all kind of tricks inside of this IP tables to make sure that this works. However, for example, Ubuntu comes with the UEFI, uncomplicated firewall, but if you make sure that IP tables is still used, then it will remove the uncomplicated part, because it makes it completely useless without a lot of configuration. So it's very simple to disable IP table support. I'm not going to go into that right now, but it's very simple. You can find it on the internet. Make sure you disable it, and it will no longer use IP tables, and you can still use firewall in the way that you want it, instead of keeping track of all the Docker things inside of the firewall. Very, very simple. You can use Ansible to preset up a server to be ready. For example, if you start up a basic Ubuntu 16.04 server, it's not ready. You need to install Docker Engine. You need to probably install your server key. You need to make a situation that you have a basic fundament for all your Docker containers to start up upon, and that you have a good security on top of that. So what I do personally is I have an Ansible script, and that basically makes the server ready for Docker. So short script adds my user. It adds the Docker user to the www data group, stuff like that, and the other way around. It's very easy, because you just run it once, and if you have to add a new server, you just run it again, and you have the same server setup. Don't use Docker on Windows or OS X. I know a lot of you developers who work on Windows and who work on OS X and who persist doing that. you're going to run into problems if you're going to work with Docker. If you're going to work with the basic Docker toolkit, which comes with the server, you're going to be running Docker on top of a virtual machine. This is what Docker basically does on your system. And the mounting of folders and everything will be chaos and will not work very good. So do not use Docker or Windows on OS X. Or don't use Windows or OS X at all. I used to be a very, very fanatic OS X. My old colleagues can vouch for that, you know?
What happened?
Docker happened.
I remember the day that I had this Linux problem. I went to you, you said the solution is open your browser, type in store.apple.com.
Yes, yes, I used to be that, yeah. So I came back from that.
Did the keychain hack gotcha?
Yes, so I came back from that, but it was more like a joke, of course, if you want to work with Windows or OS X. At the moment, there is this native beta program from Docker, which says to be working a lot better. I was invited on the beta on the first day. I tested it. Doesn't work, because when you want to mount volumes, eventually it starts working properly. I was very happy the first hour, and then it started to consume up all my CPU and all my memory because of the file system that kept being in use for everything. After an hour, my laptop completely froze. I couldn't do anything at all. So that's why I'm really, really telling you to probably want to use Linux for this. You want to keep an eye on file system permissions. This is one of the things that I see a lot in Docker, that the user that is being used inside the Docker container doesn't exist on the other side, or you're going to have the user on the host container doesn't exist in the Docker container, and you will see that the user is actually a number instead of a username, which is an indication that the user ID doesn't exist inside of the Docker container, and then all the actions will get denied, or permission problems. It will not get saved, or it might work for a while and then eventually stop working. You might have problems with garbage collection. You might end up with a session folder for 35 gigabyte or stuff like that. So watch out for that. NFS, Gluster FS, things like that, it's particularly hard to get working properly. So it does work, but if you have to configure it, very good. Don't expose every service you run. You don't want to expose MySQL, Mongo, Elasticsearch, and everything to the outside world unless you are very sure that the information that you are exposing to the outside world is needed by the outside world, or that you shielded the parts that are not needed. So if you expose 3306 to the outside world, you might you'll probably know that you're going to be getting some attacks on that port, for example, because there's port scanners and everything that does is automated. If it's not needed, don't expose it, because the servers inside don't need it to have exposed. They can contact it without the exposure to the outside. The web server can reach the database server without the exposure. It's not needed. And keep images tidy and to the point. I've strayed a lot in the past as well, where you, for example, start with an Nginx system, then you create and you add PHP 7, which is okay, and then you have you're going to add a New Relic to it, and then you're going to add Varnish. Then you want to add WebKit HTML to PDF, and then you want to add some other library, and eventually you'll end up with a 2-3 gigabyte library with a lot of tools that you don't use. So if it's not really needed inside of that image, or if it's not really needed in every image, then you probably want to consider not using it or not adding it to that specific image, and maybe you creating a different image for Varnish, for example, so you can exit it from an external source and link them to each other, because Varnish might be needed for one project but not for another. So you don't want to have it in all your containers running on that specific image. So make sure that you keep in mind what are you installing on this image. That's an important thing. So it's demo time. At the moment, I really hope people can see everything on that screen, because we haven't been able to test that.
If you wait 10 seconds, you get your answer.
Well, yeah, but I first have to start everything here and see. Is a stream able to look at this? Okay, let me see if I can duplicate this to, I cannot. Dat ja. Yeah. So the stream can't see the because I have to get it over there.
Yeah, you can choose screen share on the outside of the now.
Let me see. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can we duplicate this screen as well?
Wat ben je nu te doen?
Ik moet even hij moet even op een andere kanaal.
Ja, precies. Nu HDMI-kabel inderdaad, toch?
Mhm. Hij is nu duplicated.
Nu,
Mhm.
dit is gewoon je...
Ja, dat is Google Chrome.
Dit zou de andere moeten zijn.
Is die andere kant ingevlucht? Op de stream zien ze het wel, toch? Ja. Ja, oké.
Livestream hier moeten zijn. Weet je welk kanaal het is of niet?
Ja, die 2 man.
Ja, dat staat hier op.
Ja, voor SX is het wel, maar ik niet zien.
Ja. Kijken hoe we het anders kunnen doen. Ja.
Dan lopen we ook 10 seconden achter zo. Ja, precies. Geen idee. Als dit niet zo doet, dan wordt het verdomd interessant. Maar want, ja, die andere kunt je met Chromecast.
because of the HDMI cable not really working properly on Linux, probably works on OS X, we're going to change a little bit of the plan. If there's people interested in a demo of seeing how you set up a server and how you start up everything and how you run this stack and how you make sure that everything is available, I will be, after the talk of Stefan, I will be available on a central location where people can look at what I'm doing on a demo environment. So I'll be available, just come to me and I will show you how it's done. It's going to take like five minutes or something. So that's basically what I'm going to do with the demo. It's easier because now people on the stream can see it, but here we can't see it. Let's see if I can get the Google Hangouts back then. Ben ik klaar. So, there is no 42 slides. This was the demo. There will be a real demo after the event, then there's no problem. Are there any questions? People saved questions till the end?
Are the only volumes you can mount are defined in the volumes in the Docker file, or just mount anything?
No, you can add it with the command as well later on.
Can you always repeat the question? Yeah. Because other people don't know what the question is.
Okay, yeah. So are the only volumes that you can mount the ones that you defined in the Docker file? That's your question, right? No, you can add this. You can add the volumes, and it will create the directory for you, make sure that everything works. But if everything is in place, you can tell the system inside when you run the container, you can add options to the command line that will allow you to add more volumes.
Why do you define the volumes in the container?
Because then the directory structure and everything is in place and ready. So why? Yeah, sorry. So why do you add the volumes? That's because of the directory structure, and the whole system needs to be able to mount it in a location that actually exists. So that's the base part. It's the definition. The Docker Compose file, when you specify the volumes there, it will actually mount it for you. So it will create it and it will mount it. That's what the Compose does. So it actually orchestrates the whole thing for you. Okay.
I previously worked with Docker at one point with a discourse application. At the time, I was totally unfamiliar with Docker as a container, and as I recall, there was a method for entering the container.
Mm-hmm.
So your command line prompt would then become the command line prompt for the container.
Yes.
It sounds as though that's a horrible idea. Is that a safe thing to do, or is that totally taboo?
So the question is it a bad idea to allow a system user to be able to enter the container with a command and do things, right? Manage the container. I have a real world example that I'm going to tell you, but sometimes you will need to be able to look inside the container. Sometimes you want to, for example, there is a log file inside that you didn't map, or there is a configuration setting that you want to check out, so you want to see how it all goes. What I do is I do Docker exec, and then the command doesn't really matter, but eventually I will use /bin/bash, and I will enter the container. It's very simple. What happens is when I create a container on a base image, I will never install any editor. So I will not add Vim or Nano or anything. I will make sure that it's not there. The developers that work with my images are always complaining, because that's what I want. I want them to complain, because what they do is they come to me and they say, I want to edit this configuration file and it doesn't work. Yes, that's the idea, because if you edit it and I will upgrade the server, then tomorrow it's gone. Or if they edit it and you don't know that it's edited and it stays in that state for a while, you might have problems that are gone after you update the server, or the other way around. So usually it's not a very good idea to have people wandering around inside your Docker containers, but there are situations that you might want to actually be able to look inside the container. Does this answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
You're talking about updating your server and that configuration files are gone when you update it. Where does your data live?
Sorry, where does your
data live?
Oh, yes.
If you update the
So when you update your container, the question is, when you update your container, the changes you make inside the container are gone. So where does the data persist? Where is the persistent data? So the volumes that we just talked about, this tells the system to mount files from your local server. So you have this server, and on top of there you will build Docker containers. But the volumes part will tell the Docker container that it's using a specific directory on your server and mount it inside of the Docker container. So when you have a MySQL server, every MySQL database is in var lib MySQL. This is the directory that MySQL persists its own databases. If you didn't mount it and you update your server, then all your databases are gone. So this is what you don't want. Yes. So what you do is you actually mount inside of var lib MySQL, you will mount a folder inside of your host system. It doesn't have to be var lib MySQL. You can mount /data/MySQL. This is what I do. I actually have a directory that I use to cluster all of these files that I want to mount inside of the container. And I use /data/MySQL, /data/this/data/that. And I will mount it inside the proper location. So I map /data/MySQL to /var/lib/MySQL. And when I update the container, it will do the same thing again, and the files will still be there, because the files are not actually inside the container, but they're mounted. So that's how the data gets persisted. Eventually, when you do that, you want to back up those files maybe, because if your host system dies, then you're still going to be losing data. Yes? Okay.
So I'm interested in using Docker for a testing environment with a real browser.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a way to actually see what the browser does when the test in a Docker container is running?
You mean like Selenium testing?
Yes.
I think there are, if you look at CodeShip, CodeShip is currently using continuous integration, which is what you want, for Docker environments as well. And I think they also support Selenium testing. So that's probably, the question was, I have to tell it as well, is it possible to use some tool like Selenium testing inside a Docker automated testing environment?
And also be able to see it executing inside the browser. I mean, I've heard it's possible, but you've not.
I have not done it personally, no. I've read about that it's being possible to run Selenium inside a Docker container. I have done continuous integration with Docker, building a container, adding your code on top of that, running PHP unit, checking the PHP unit reports and everything. It works nice. And then after that, you can deploy the container, and you have a continuous deployment system as well, where you have the deployment automatically to production, for example, if you want to. But on Selenium testing, I've read about that it's possible, and I believe CodeShip already does it, is able to do it. But it's not easy. It works, but it's...
Oh.
It's continuous integration with Docker. First time I came into contact with that, I think it took me 6 or 7 weeks to get a system fully going. But then it was very early, because CodeShip was only starting to give out beta to Docker, the Docker environment. And there were not really a lot of continuous integration tools that were able to work with Docker. There is a lot more right now, but it took me like 7 weeks in the start, and maybe they made it easier now, but it's not a very easy task.
I'm going to cut you off now because we're over time.
Yes.
That usually means something.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you very much.
No problem. If there's any questions. If there's any questions later, just come to me and I will be happy to answer them more for you, okay? So have a nice evening.
Okay, for the rest, let's have a 5-minute break where you can go to the toilet and whatever. Toilets are like an empty floor. They're around the corner of the stairs, I hear, for those of you who have not seen them yet. So remember, 5 minutes break and then we'll continue, okay? Okay, thank you. Thank you all. So, as said before, we are a bit over time slot. So, let's quickly give our attention to Stefan Koopmanschap and let's welcome him to the stage.
I think that's the best welcome I've ever had. Thank you very much. I seem to be a bit like Dutch Railways. I start way too late. But I'll try to keep it short enough so that you can still enjoy a beer before you go home. So my talk tonight is called Level Up Your Team. And it's about training, education. But let's start with myself. Let me introduce myself. My name is Stefan Koopmanschap. I run a company called Ingewikkeld, which is very interesting for the non-Dutchies. Over the years, I've worked in several different positions as a team lead or technical lead, stuff like that. So I have a bit of, experience with education and learning and getting people to learn and stuff like that. And these days, one of my main roles within just about every position that I'm in as a consultant coming into a company is to help them learn. So that's what I'm going to try to do tonight as well, help you learn a bit. First of all, for those interested, if you can follow me on Twitter, I'm Scoop. It's your own risk if you follow me. And the first thing I want to mention is a bit of a commercial. If you're interested in learning about freelancing, the Dutch Web Alliance, which is an association that I'm a member of, has a free meetup on September 7 in Hilversum, which is about starting to be a freelancer, or if you just recently started, it's about being a freelancer, basically. So if you want to learn more about being a freelancer, come over. You can check the O10PHP hashtag. I already spammed the link. Now, before we go into learning, I want to learn a bit about you as well. First things first, the most important things. Who here plays Pokemon Go?
Yellow!
Much respect that you actually made it here instead of walking around, because there's quite a few Pokestops here. Team Mystic, by the way.
Don't start a fight.
So now about the actual important stuff. Any one of you here who is responsible for education or training within their company? A couple? Okay. Anyone here that is a team lead or a technical lead or something like that? There's more hands now than with the first question. That's interesting. If you're a team lead or a tech lead and you feel you're not responsible for education and learning, this might be the right talk for you. So when I started writing this talk, I had a very specific audience in mind, which was team leads and tech leads and management people, stuff like that. And then I first did this one, I think it was last year at the Dutch PHP conference in the Uncon. And basically the response I got was mostly from people that are not a tech lead and not a team lead and still thought it was quite interesting. So I hope you all find it interesting. Some of it may be, I know this already. Hopefully there's a couple of new things in there as well. First, let's look at a problem. Because we are developers, so we like solving problems. One of the main challenges these days is try and find good developers. Any of you, especially the ones in a lead function, in management function, will know that it is very hard to find new people. Companies do crazy things like hosting a meetup these days. They even organize burgers. I mean, so back in the days when I was responsible for hiring, when I didn't have my own company yet, I was not really looking at hiring people because of their skills. I wasn't looking at their CVs. I wasn't really looking at stuff like that. But I was more looking at their mindset. Because if you start hiring people based on ambition, it's going to be much easier to get them to the level that you want them than to find the people that are already on that level. So instead of just looking at the CV and stuff like that, start asking them questions, and once they can answer you and they start a whole story about, you know, their passion, stuff like that, these are the right people. So it all starts with even hiring the right people. And there's a lot of, you know, rock stars isn't the right word, but there's a lot of important, you know, senior level people in the PHP community that have no formal computer science education at all. You know, I've worked with people that have a history education or a regular science education. I had someone working for me for 3 years that was someone who studied language, Dutch language. I mean, it has literally nothing to do with PHP itself, but they're still good people. So just don't look at, you know, what kind of diplomas do you have and stuff like that. Look at what do you want to learn? What are you passionate about? Stuff like that. And then the next challenge is make sure that the good developers that you get actually stay good. Because this is I think a classic discussion that you will find everywhere on the internet, which is the manager saying to the team lead, what happens if we invest in our developers and they leave? And then the team lead says, what happens if we don't and they stay? Now, in the current tech world, every day that you don't learn anything, you fall behind. Because stuff is so, you know, developing so fast that there's something new every single day. I've heard about Docker now 2 times, and I still haven't played with it, which is a bad thing. Now, luckily, I have someone working for me that, you know, knows stuff about Docker. But I mean, that's a good thing. So now my company at least has some Docker knowledge. So when you do stuff like this, when you're hiring, you really want to focus on getting people aboard that want to learn and want to keep learning. Mike, who is working for me, is now actually learning game development with Unity, just because he loves it. And now all of a sudden we have a customer interested in doing some serious gaming stuff. So now he can apply the stuff that he learned in his day job. You know, that's awesome. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, the regular 9-to-5 developer that just wants to get into the office, do his job, and leave at 5. But there's a good chance that they won't learn anything, because you have to invest time into learning new things. And it's going to be hard if you just want to arrive at work, leave work, and then forget about work. So it's something that both the developers that you're hiring and you as a company have to, you know, invest in. So let's look at a couple of ways that you can, you know, do some learning. Because we have to do continuous learning. This is a term that's been going around for quite a bit now. And as I mentioned before, in the current tech world, you cannot not learn, because if you don't learn, you fall behind. And well, let's just have a look. How do we learn? First thing you can do, and that's a very simple one, is organize knowledge sessions inside the company you're working for. Get your team together, get someone to present on a topic they like. You can do that on a couple of, I don't know about you, Fridays are usually not very productive for me. This is a great day to have a knowledge session. Of course, Mondays are not really productive either, and Tuesdays when you haven't had coffee yet. But, you know, okay, Fridays. Let's take a Friday, schedule a meeting that lasts for 1 hour and have 1 or 2 people do a small presentation about something they like. And the funny thing about knowledge sessions is, it doesn't have to be your senior developer that does a talk on whatever topic he is working on right now. It could be your junior developer that actually is fresh into your company and has something exciting to say. And everyone will learn from that. And the funny thing is, this has the added bonus of your junior developer feeling heard, feeling like he's appreciated, he's actually contributing something to the company. So aside from everyone learning, there is bonus material in there. knowledge sessions like these, you should keep it informal. You don't, you know, it isn't a conference. It is just a group of people who work together who want to share some information. So keep it informal. Maybe, you know, pay for their lunch and have them sit during lunch and stuff like that. You could do pizza sessions. So let them stay after work, feed them all pizza. That's how it works, right? feed them all some pizza and then do the talks. Something like that. Of course, if you look outside of your company, there's a very similar thing to those knowledge sessions, which is user groups. You may not have heard of the concept of a user group, but it's a group of people that, you know, do stuff and like to share that. Oh wait, we're at a user group right now. Basically a user group. I don't know about you, I'm here.
I'm paid to be here.
Really?
No.
Ah. So anyway, a user group is just like a knowledge session, like an internal knowledge session, but with a group of people from different companies. And with a speaker that comes from a completely different city in this case, coming over to share some knowledge. And everyone can stand here. You could stand here, you could stand here, you could stand here. Everyone can stand here and share something. And apparently, they're still looking for speakers for next year. They are. So, and aside from, you know, things like O10 PHP, I would recommend looking around you and maybe also go to some polyglot user groups. It's like a user group that's not pinned down to a single language. So you can actually pick up information from other languages, how they solve certain problems and, you know, how they do stuff. There's some nice user groups in the Netherlands, like Domcode in Utrecht, or if you want to travel a bit farther, Apeldoorn Dev in Apeldoorn. It's very informal, usually, a user group, as you can see here. And it's a lot of fun. Oh, I didn't know that one.
No, it's only a few times a year.
There's probably a meetup page, right?
And once a month we have O70 Dev.
O70 is?
The Hague.
Oh, The Hague. Okay, yes, yes. Sorry, I don't know much more than O30. So if you want to go a bit further than a user group, going to a conference is a good idea. Anyone who here has been to a conference before? That's good. That's good. Anyone here who has been to a conference before that was not on PHP? That's quite a few as well. That's very nice. Anyone here who has been to a conference that wasn't in the Netherlands? This is a very good audience. Why am I telling you this? Conferences are a bit more formal than user groups, but there's usually also a lot more to learn, because instead of 1 or 2 talks, you have 1 or 2 or 3 days of talks, and sometimes even tutorials. Don't forget, when you go to a conference, to not just attend the talks, but also attend the hallway track. This is something that's never in your schedule, because it just exists in the hallway. It's talking to people, because meeting people is very important at a conference, because it will give you some new friends or people that you can maybe work with at some point or ask for help when you're stuck. And as with the user groups, go to a polyglot conference, go to something that's not just about PHP or whatever language you work with. Domcode has a very good conference coming up. Or, you know, do something that's not really related to programming at all. There was a very nice conference in Paris called Git Merge, which was just about Git. I wasn't there, but one of my developers was there, and he was really, really excited about it. And as I mentioned, don't just go to the nearest conference. Go to a conference somewhere outside of the Netherlands, so you meet new people, see some new faces, hear some new things. Well, and then there's, of course, trainings. There's you know, the most obvious one is classroom trainings where you sit down and listen to someone for 2 days or 3 days, which is usually, it can be good, it can be interesting, but usually I find it quite boring because most people learn better when they actually do stuff instead of just listen to people. So then there is a couple of companies that actually do hands-on training, which is much more interesting. Last year we had Academy Symphony masterclass, which was quite interesting in Amsterdam, where people, you know, they had 4 different rooms, and you could pick some topics and learn specifically on that topic. And then there are some new and revolutionary events. So here we go for the commercial break. The only problem with this commercial break is it's sold out already.
Okay, next.
I should promote apparently WeCamp 2017, which I'm not even sure will exist, but we'll see.
Isn't there something about tomorrow deadline?
Yes. Je maait het gras voor mijn voeten weg. You're mowing the grass before my feet. The thing with WeCamp is, so full disclosure, I'm organizing WeCamp. The idea behind WeCamp is it's 5 days, it's on an island, a private island, we just rent the whole island. It's intense, which usually geeks are a bit awkward about. And you're going to work together with random people that you don't know yet. So you get out of your comfort zone a lot. And that's basically the idea of WeCamp. And the funny thing is, we have a challenge, the WeCamp challenge, which you don't need to have a ticket to WeCamp to compete in the challenge. You just have to do something really awesome with the assignment that we have on our website. So you can just go to our website and check out the challenge. The only interesting challenge now is the deadline is tomorrow. So, good luck. Back to the regular program.
Tomorrow, what time?
That's a good question. I think noon, but I'm not sure.
What time zone?
What time? I don't think I actually specified the time zone, so I don't know. If you're going to work on something, let me know on Twitter, and maybe we can change the time zone.
I will tweet you right now.
So, let's move on. Is anyone familiar with small controlled experiments? Couple of people, okay. So the idea of small controlled experiments is you don't know if something works until you find out. So instead of when you run into a problem and you invite all the developers into a meeting room and start discussing it for a couple of hours, and by that, you know, spending a ridiculous amount of money on, you know, the paycheck of everyone that's in that meeting, why not just try it out? So this can be done, you know, as part of your regular work. You don't really have to set aside time, but you can just, you know, when you run into a problem, instead of inviting everyone in a meeting room and discuss it, why not just try to find a solution? Set a time box, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. Set a time box and try to find a solution. And the funny thing is, if you fail to find a solution, you will learn something anyway. And then if you find the solution, you solve the problem. And you haven't spent like a ridiculous amount of hours talking about it, but you just did it. So basically, build, it doesn't have to be like fully tested, test-driven, you know, using all the design patterns that you have. You just need to build a proof of concept. See if you can solve the problem with the idea you have in mind. And then failure is learning as good as success. I will share the slides online so you don't have to write down the link. But there's a very nice article by Matthias Verraas about small controlled experiments, and I would recommend reading that. Now, similar to small controlled experiments is code kata. But with CodeKata, you don't take like a real world problem from your work, but there's just a huge set of assignments online that you can take, and most of them are relatively simple. Well, some of them are quite advanced, but problems that you can solve. And if the idea is that you just, think of something else aside from your regular work. Just try to solve this problem in whatever way you want to solve that problem. So just like the experiments that I was talking about before, failure is also a lesson. So you don't have to succeed right at once. There's someone playing with this elephant. It's a mammoth, sorry. But the idea of CodeKata is actually to learn by doing. Just do something, try to solve a problem, and then learn by doing that. And whether you succeed or fail, you learn anyway. There's a website, codekata.com, which has a huge list of these small assignments that you can do. Well, one that is a bit less obvious in terms of learning, but very useful, and that you can incorporate into your day job, is pair programming. So usually pair programming is identified as a way to improve code, but it is a very good way to learn as well. The idea of pair programming is that you sit down with two people, one person has the keyboard and the other person sits next to it, and together you're going to develop. So while the idea is that your code quality will improve because of this, because you're talking with two people about a problem and how to solve it, you might get some new ideas or different ways of thinking about a problem that will, teach you something. And I'm not sure if people are familiar with the term rubber ducking. Pair programming is a lot about rubber ducking. It's about trying to explain a certain problem to someone else and then finding the solution yourself. And you usually do that with a rubber duck or with a mammoth or an elephant. So the idea is that you learn about other ways of thinking about a problem. But actually when I did this in Amersfoort, this talk, afterwards I was talking to a professional tester, and he mentioned that there's been some research on this, and pair programming actually helps you to reduce the amount of defects with 20 to 50%. So that's quite a lot. Similar to that is code reviews. Again, usually code reviews are identified as a way of improving the quality of the code. But just like with pair programming, you learn about how someone else solves a problem. And also, people will comment on your code and you learn from those comments. One very important thing with code reviews is when someone is commenting on your code, it is not a personal comment on you, it's a comment on your code. I've seen some issues with this, so it's very important. But both parties in a code review will learn, because the person reviewing will look at the code, see the solution that someone else built, and maybe learn a thing or two about how other people think about this. And the person whose code is being reviewed obviously gets the comments how to improve his code. Okay, so this one is obvious. How many of you don't read tech books on a regular basis? Yeah. Oh, there's a couple of hands. There's a couple of hands. You should start reading tech books.
You have to finish them for the count.
If you actually have to finish them before they actually count, I would probably not read any tech books at all. Usually I get inspired by chapter 2 and then just start doing stuff. Anyway, reading books. It sounds so obvious, but there's a couple of people here already. And, I must admit that last tech book I actually read was probably about 6 months ago. So I maybe should start a new tech book. I still have a couple, I have a stack like this probably back at home that I haven't even started in. That's the problem with going to conferences where they have a O'Reilly stand selling books. Ooh, this looks interesting. And then you get back home and it goes on top of the stack.
Was already there.
And it was already there. Sometimes that happens. Another recommendation I can give you, I learned a lot by reading a non-tech book. This is a biography by Amanda Palmer. We're referring it later. I learned a lot from this book, which is very funny because it is a biography of a rock artist. It has nothing to do with program. Well, okay, her mother is a programmer and she mentions that. But, oh, spoilers, oops. The funny thing is, even when you're reading books that don't have anything to do with tech in general, PHP, you can still learn from that. So aside from reading tech books, make some time to read non-tech books. Sometimes it helps. So this is a scary one. No, I'm gonna spend some time on this one. There's two different ways of learning from documentation. You can read the manual and find out about features that you didn't know yet, or understand how things work. How many of you actually read documentation for the libraries that you use? You're lying. There's so many.
I read like the Wix stars. I translated the PHP manual documentation 3 times in French.
You translated it, okay. Yes. So before you translate it, you have to read it. Okay, that counts. Yeah. Anyway, this is the most obvious one. Spend some time on the documentation, and I don't mean that you actually have to sit down before you start using a library and read through all of the documentation for that library. That would be stupid. But when you run into a problem, next time you run into a problem with a library, instead of running to Twitter or IRC or Slack asking the question, maybe just check the documentation yourself, because sometimes the answer is actually in there. But of course, the other way of learning is write the fucking manual. And that doesn't mean that you have to document all of the code you're writing. But what it does mean is that you can actually spend some time on writing documentation. Because a lot of open source projects, for instance, one of the most missing parts actually is documentation. And it's actually, once you're a bit familiar with the code, it's actually quite easy to write the documentation. And the funny thing is, just like with rubber ducking and stuff like that, once you start thinking about how you can actually document code, you start thinking about the code in a completely different way, and you might actually learn a couple of things. Or change a couple of things. That's a very good one. And I've added 2 more. Oh wait, update and delete. So update, well, that makes sense, right? Especially with open source, a lot of the documentation is, there's quite a bit of documentation that is outdated. And what better way to help future you or someone else by sending a pull request with a quick fix for the documentation. That's contributing to open source just as much as contributing code. And there's one thing worse than no documentation, and that's out-of-date documentation. So, do the whole world a pleasure and help out with documentation. If you don't have the time to do it, or if you don't really know how to do it, then just delete the incorrect part. As I mentioned, there is one thing worse than no documentation, and that's bad documentation. So it basically is okay to send a pull request to a project removing a bit of documentation when it's outdated. That's okay. Of course, preferably update it, Otherwise, delete it. So yes, write all the things. There's much more documentation than the /docs directory in every project. You can write blog posts on your blog. Who here has no blog? It's time to start a blog right now. It's very easy, you know, WordPress.com, Medium.com, whatever. Or you could write articles for magazines. There's actually a lot of PHP magazines always looking for people that want to write for them, like PHP Architect, which is my favorite PHP magazine. They're always looking for authors. And the funny thing about that is you actually get paid to write an article. Okay. I think some people just ran out to write articles. So mentoring is an interesting thing. Mentoring is still something that doesn't get too much attention in the software world, or maybe even outside the software world, while it can have a lot of value. So if you have a team where you have a couple of senior developers, maybe some media developers, and a couple of junior developers, assign every developer a mentor or a mentee, depending on their level. And make sure that there's regular mentoring sessions. So make sure that that senior developer sits down once every week for maybe 30 minutes with the junior developer, just to talk about stuff. Have them, you know, have them help each other. And the funny thing is, with a mentoring program, both parties will actually learn from it. Your junior developer will learn a lot of tech stuff from the senior developer, and the senior developer will actually learn some social skills, which in programming is a bit hard. No, but seriously, the senior will learn some social skills, will learn how to explain stuff, will learn how to help people, and that is, especially in programming world, a very important skill that is lacking way too often. Of course, you can also have external mentors. There is PHP Mentoring, which is a program specifically, it's a site that is specifically meant for people in the PHP community to either find a mentor or find a mentee. So you can go to the site and register and say, okay, I'm available to help someone, to mentor someone. Or you can say, you know, I need a mentor. There's a lot of people on there from around the world that are willing to help you or that need help. So I've been told that app.phpmentoring.org is actually the right URL because that's the new website, which is much better than the old website. So go there. And if you are a tech lead or a team lead or a manager, then it might be interesting to get someone like a consultant come over to your company, you know, once every month or whatever, to talk to your developers. You know, you need to invest some money into that, obviously, because, you know, consultants don't work for free. But it can help a lot to get some people with a vision that is different from your own company's vision, you know, to help with, you know, mentoring. Having said that, hi, I do stuff like that. And don't forget the social part. As I mentioned, social skills are very much underrepresented in the programming world. And learning is not just about code. So organize some kind of company event or team event every once in a while that has nothing to do with code. Go laser gaming, go bowling, go airsoft, go play Pokemon Go with the whole team. It might be wise though to, you know, have everyone on the same team mystic. Otherwise, people will get into a fight.
Maybe pair Pokemon going to make sure that one stays watching the road.
Well, you can actually pair
this is teamwork right here. One person doesn't play and watches the road while everyone else is walking around like this. So Are there any other people here that have an idea of, you know, what you can do to, you know, learn stuff like that? No? Yeah?
You mentioned a consultant.
Yes?
From time to time we rent a freelancer to help with extra work.
Mm-hmm.
And like 20% of the time his work is just asking him questions about how do you do things, and
Yes.
it's a very handy learning experience, and it doesn't it's expensive as a consultant who is just there for that job.
Yes. Oh, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Actually, that's stuff I do as well.
So abuse your freelance.
Yeah.
Have you heard of edX?
edX?
The platform, MOOC platform?
No.
So it's open source, so we install it on a virtual machine as a server,
Yeah.
and we create our own courses within the company, and it's a platform that's also used by Harvard and lots of like.
Okay, so that's edX,
Yeah.
which is a platform that you
But
can
it's
install.
open source, so you can like install it like locally.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to translate for the people downstairs and the people at home. So it's called edX, and it's basically an e-learning platform,
Yes.
open source, where you can create your own courses for inside your company, or I guess for outside your company if you want to. Okay, thank you very much. And you had something?
Test-driven development.
Test-driven development, very good one. Very good one. Just like code review and pair programming, usually people identify it as something to, you know, improve your code, but it's all about learning as well. So given the time, I'm going to speed this up a bit. So we've got all these ways of, you know, learning, but how do we motivate people to learn? Now this is something that's sometimes very hard. So I said at the start, you need to hire people that want to learn. You need to hire people that have ambition, that are willing to learn, that want to, you know, improve themselves, improve their skills. And it is a lot easier to find a junior or a media developer than a senior developer in the current world. So, yeah, sounds obvious. Where's my water? This one. Another very important part, and I've seen this go wrong in a lot of companies where I either worked or, you know, was just a freelancer or a consultant coming in, is that as an employer or as a team lead or as a tech lead, you need to show that you want them to learn. Because if people are not motivated by themselves, and you basically show no interest in having them learn, they'll never learn. They'll never be motivated to do that. So let's have a look at some ways to, you know, show your developers that you're serious. A good starting point is by creating a personal development plan. Now this sounds all fancy and formal, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be like a single A4 piece of paper where you basically, after you do a meeting, a one-on-one meeting between manager and developer, and you just say, okay, where are we now in terms of skills? What do you already do? And where do you want to be in, you know, a year time? And then once you've set the current base point and the target, you start looking at, okay, what can we do to get there? Should we get you some training? Should we get you some external help, or maybe some internal people that can help you? Stuff like that. It can be very simple, and, you know, I know there's companies that actually, you know, evaluate people and give them a raise or something based on their goals. I think that's maybe not the best idea, because this is not, the personal development plan should not be something that is set in stone. Basically, it's very agile. You can change it, you know, every once in a while. Look at where you are at that point, look at where you've been, and see if the goal that you set before is still the right goal. Maybe you should change the goal. Maybe it should be something different. So don't make it a fixed thing. For the next year, you're only going to learn about, you know, Symfony 3. And then half a year into it, the whole company switches to Zen Framework, and your goal is still to learn Symfony 3. So it can change along the way. And then, and this is a scary part for the managers, you need to invest money. Most companies have some kind of training budget. Some companies more than others. But you know, learning costs money. Buying the conference ticket, attending a training, hiring an external consultant to come and help you. Stuff like that costs money. So, you know, have some kind of budget ready. For me, for my company, I'm not a manager, I'm not a business person, so I don't have a set budget. Basically, when someone comes to me and says, you know, I want to go to Gitmerge in Paris, and I basically look at my bank account, yeah, that's okay. I'll pay for your train ticket and your hotel and the ticket to the conference, and you'll be fine. In bigger companies, I can imagine it should be a bit more formal, but you know, it shouldn't be too hard for your developers to go out and learn, basically. And keep that conversation open. So don't tell them, okay, you've got a budget and it's for training, good luck. But just keep talking to each other. And for some people, it's even hard, you know, to attend a meetup. Because then you have to drive like 20 kilometers and gas costs money, and I just had a new baby, and you know, stuff like that happens. So be realistic, and if someone needs like 20 euros just for the gas, that's okay. It should be okay. Last year at WeCamp, we had a group of developers that went beyond just building a website, because one of the team members brought an Arduino. And they started playing with the Arduino and made it, you know, play some music and stuff like that. And they built a Slack bot, so you can type in something and the Arduino would do something with it. So they went beyond just doing a standard website. And it's, you know, an Arduino costs what, $25, $30 for a basic Arduino? That's not a lot of money. And it will help your developers to learn. So, you know, invest in an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi or something like that. That's fun. And then the one thing we always forget. Developers won't just learn in their own time. Some people do. But most of them don't, because they have a life. This is scary, but developers have a life outside of their work as well. So as a team lead, as a manager, as a company, you need to enable the developers, you know, to spend some time. Give them some time off. What I sometimes did is when people went to a user group at night, I just told them to come in to work 2 hours later the next day. So that the time they lost in the evening, they could make up in the morning. Well, lost in the evening, yes, okay. They could.
Does the Amsterdam Geek and Games and Geek Night count? Geeks and drinks, that's it.
Amsterdam PHP Geeks and Drinks does not go. No, that does. At least it doesn't work for me. I cannot talk about, you know, how other employers look at that. But then again, that's always on a Friday, so you can take the next 2 hours off next morning. You know, there's a lot of ways to, you know, invest time. So basically, what we do with Ingewikkeld is we have the 80-20 rule. So that means that every Friday we don't work for customers. And instead, we work on our own projects or on open source or on stuff like WeCamp, because apparently organizing WeCamp takes a lot of time. But yeah, Mike, who works for me, he is also the main developer of PHP Documenter. You might have used it. He spends a lot of his Friday on working on PHP Documenter. We've basically started PHP Amersfoort user group and spent a lot of our Friday time on starting PHP Amersfoort. Stuff like that. And the funny thing is, your company, aside from, you know, having your developers learn stuff, can gain a lot of other stuff as well. Like, there's now my company logo on the PHP Documenter website. Yay. As well as on the PHP Amersfoort website. And of course, we've got epic stuff like WeCamp. which people seem to appreciate. We're sold out. Oh, did I mention that already? So the most important lesson for those of you that are tech leads is that you need to enable your developers to learn. And I like this word enable because you know, a couple of years ago, people that were organizing conferences and user groups were organizers. And then Rafael Dooms came to the Netherlands and he said, no, we're going to be enablers because we're just as much part of the community as the rest of the people. So we just enable them, you know, to do something fun. So I like this. We are enablers, and as a company, I think we are responsible to enable our developers to learn and to, you know, improve themselves. And then don't be scared about people leaving. People do leave. That's just how it works. So at the end of last year, Jelrik, who was working for me at that time, oh damn, spoilers. He came to me and he said, you know, I think I'm going to look for another job. And he didn't just, you know, hand in a resignation, but he actually sat down and talked to me and explained why he was going to look for another job. Which is, you know, I really appreciate that. And I could understand it. He'd been doing, you know, consulting stuff for 3 years, and he wanted now to find a job where he could work on something for a very long time as part of a fixed team. Funny thing is, I then introduced him to my client, and now I'm working with him every day again. I can swear a lot more now that I'm not his employer anymore, though. But there's a lot of reasons why people leave. Because they want a different challenge, because they want to work with different people, because they want less travel time, very important, because they want to earn more money. Stuff like that. Apparently, offering, you know, good facilities for learning is a very good reason for people to want to join your company. So if you want to join my company, so don't worry about the conversation that I discussed earlier, the manager team lead conversation. It is okay that people leave, just don't be afraid of it. Because if you're afraid of it and you're going to, you know, stop teaching them because you want to keep them, then in the end, your projects and your code will suffer. So don't be afraid that they leave, be afraid that they don't learn and stay. And that's it.
Due to the kind of time limit that we have, I want to ask, like, if you got questions, just like 2 questions now and the rest later at the social part.
Okay, 2 questions, go! Well, that was fast. Just one question.
Yeah, if you're the smartest guy of the company, then it's more difficult sometimes, right?
No, because maybe you won't learn as much about technology, but you will learn a lot about the social skills and, you know, teaching other people and stuff like that. It's a different set of skills that you're improving on, but it's still skills that you're improving on. Unless you're like the perfect person that already knows everything, then it's going to be a bit harder. You know, if you're like me, did I really say that? Okay, one more question.
What is the second question?
42.
42.
Shit, that was the answer. Just to, you know, promote myself, I'm Scoop on Twitter. Leftontheweb.com is my blog. And please give me some feedback. This link will, you know, it's a nice redirector. It redirects back to JoinedIn, where you can give feedback on my talk and on Ron's talk. So thank you very much. Who's into soccer? Football? There you go. Jammer joh.
Yours is here. Oh, is that mine?
Yes, it is. So you should.
Okay, let's get
Do you need the mic?
I kind of need the mic downstairs.
Yes.
Oh, mic drop. you're like Eminem. So where's the power outlet?
Not there. Onder de tafel.
It's raffle time. So, yes, thank you very much, Stefan and Ron, for helping out, for presenting their talks here at O10 PHP. As said earlier, it's now raffle time, and earlier I mean just like a minute ago. Well, I would like to first ask, which raffle item shall we raffle first? That's the first question, actually. Let's make this a bit more interactive.
42.
42 is not an answer.
Just follow the list.
Okay, well, shall we follow the list then? Okay, then we go for the PHP Storm license then. I would like to ask Peter, can you grab a raffle or a lottery? Lot? What is it? A number.
No, you're out of luck. This one.
So,
I have the magic number.
so if I'm correct, that number corresponds to the one that people have in their pockets, or
Should be.
it should
Who
be.
doesn't have it
So,
in their pocket? In their pocket.
you guys have your lot in hand? Your number? Yeah?
Otherwise it's gone, so.
It starts with a 7
Hands up if your number starts with 7.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Keep it up, keep it up.
Follows with a 4.
Okay, next one.
Nobody?
Nobody?
I guess.
Oh wait, there, oh there. Oh wow, okay.
Third number is 8.
Woo! Yeah. Do you have?
They're the same. Oh
They're the same.
Yep.
Do you have a contact card or anything I can? No? Then I'll just do this. Now, but just like PHP Storm 748. Als jij hier dan even jouw naam en mailadres treft, voornamelijk het mailadres, dat is heel belangrijk. Okay, then the next 4 items, well actually, I kind of had problems counting because I thought I was bringing 4 power banks, but it's a bit more. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's double the amount.
Pokemon Go.
Yeah. So we've got 8 of those. Well, let me do the honors myself then. Again, the number starts with 7. Put them up again if you have 7. I very much like that. Okay, the second number is 4. Keep them up if the second number is 4. Wait, what, really?
Yeah.
Oh man, the third number actually also is 4.
Yeah. It's about right. No, we try it again.
No, you won, right? You won.
Yeah, no.
I got a few more. Well, this is you.
No.
Okay, yeah, well, I had this one. Again, I like the raising hand stuff, man. It makes me feel powerful. That's new. So first number is 7. Second number is 2. And the last number is 1. 7. 721. Anyone? No?
Everyone with 7 and 2 gets one.
No. Nice try, lady. Okay, well then this one's out. Then another one.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. 7. Come on, where's the applause? Where's the drama about this? Come on, guys. 701.
Met zoveel prijzen gaat het heel lang duren als je het zo doet.
No. I will get another one then. Oh, this is a different one. 4, 0, 5. Yeah? Come get your power bank then. Then that's. You got one? Yeah. Okay. 7, 2, 9. It's not 7 of 9, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. 729. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, you can either. They're actually different. You can pick that one is gray and that one is the white color. So. Okay. Congratulations. We have 4, 0, 6. You want a grade? Okay, that has been resolved already. Wow, I shouldn't have brought so many actually. Well, this guy's gonna like it. Well, I got a 4, I got a 0, and I got a 1. Ja, goed man, dankjewel. I got a 7, a 3, and a 5. No one? 7, 35, what? No one? No? Congrats, man. Ja, let me neer.
He's got the reach.
I'm the hooligan here, buddy.
You're gonna learn something.
You know I know capoeira, hè? I got a 7, a 0, and an 8. 708. Draw again. 7. A 7, a 1, and a 9. Yeah? Congrats. Okay, ja, leg maar neer. Wit of grijs? Okay. Okay, 2 more to go. So I will pick 2 at once. 709. Wait, did we have one before?
719.
No. 709, nobody? 731. 731. Okay. The last power bank. 726. Yeah? Okay, yeah. Okay, next on the list is a notebook from Ingewikkeld. Stefan, would you do the honors?
It starts with a 7. Yeah. And a 1. And then a 2.
Hey!
Fucking notebook.
It's something he got for free. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. Stefan, would you do the honors again?
Four, 1, 5.
415.
This is how we control the right to have
Yeah, that's one's yours. Yeah, thank you. All right. Wow. Let's do the Docker registry first. So, Ron, would you do the honors? Anyone?
There's one to go. Are they downstairs?
No, they're not.
7, 1, 6.
Can I get your name and email? 7. What was the number?
16.
16. If you could write it here. And your email. It's Tsuwan. Tsuwan, double N.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Congrats. We will contact you about the registry.
Right.
Yeah. And Docker. Wat was jouw nummer?
416.
Nou, zou je ook even je naam en je mailadres wil invoeren of opgeven. Okay, about the lockpicking sets, due to the time, I will just go like, who wants a lockpicking set? Ja, gooi maar gewoon hoor. Okay, if you really want a lockpicking set, come to me in a few moments. I have some other ones. Anyway, I think it's beer time, right?
Next meetup.
Is it beer time?
Next meetup.
Oh yeah, next. Yeah, well, I already had that.
Als mensen nog boekjes hebben, het demo van HoloLens en Oculus Rift beneden. Ik weet niet of het rond deze tijd nog
Okay. Okay, so one short moment. I know we've had a long sitting. I just got informed that there's a HoloLens and the Oculus Rift downstairs waiting. It's not a raffle. It's just to play with. A few new cases of beer has been brought here, so please enjoy a nice drink, stay, chat a while. As said before, next month we have Sjoerd Maassen coming over to present his talk on machine learning support vector machines. And hope you had a good time. Leave feedback on Joined In, and we hope to see you next month. Thank you all for being here. Oké, ja. Ja, dat kunnen we zo meteen wel even roepen.